In 1968, Americans did not get immediate punditry. There wasn't much talk radio. There was no cable TV national programming, but there were newspapers. However, newspapers were not on a 24-hour day, 7 days a week news cycle. So it took time for this news item to sink in. Tommie Smith, John Carlos, and Peter Norman had staged a political protest during the playing of the American national anthem following their Mexico City Olympics event. Smith won the 200-meter sprint. Norman was second, Carlos third. Smith's win was secondary. He and Carlos raised their fists while Norman wore an Olympics Project for Human Rights button. On the podium, Smith and Carlos were barefooted, protesting poverty, and wore beads and scarves to protest lynching. Smith and Carlos were thrown out of the Olympic Village. The International Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage was no fan of athletes protesting. Writers from the Los Angeles Times, Time, and the Chicago Tribune were furious. Those publications condemned Smith and Carlos. Chicago American writer Brent Musburger called them a pair of black-skinned stormtroopers. Smith and Carlos did have supporters. The U.S. Olympic crew team, made up mostly of Harvard students, put out a message backing Smith and Carlos. Smith and Carlos, who held the ultimate sports protest, somehow ended up in the National Football League. Smith with then the AFL Cincinnati Bengals in 1969, and Carlos with the Philadelphia Eagles as a 15th round pick. He didn't play because of a knee injury. Sports organizations and partners had no problem with Carlos, who worked for a sneaker company, and the United States Olympic Committee, or Smith, who was a college track and field coach. The protest didn't accomplish much other than to call attention to what was going on in 1968. 50 years later, some of those problems remain. I'm Evan Weiner for the Politics of Sports Business.